basically rules in favor of Pacifica.
Be my judge.
What do you think, what would be the best court, why, because I don't know what the hell that means. What does it mean?
Onward to the Supreme
What?
Court. We go to the Supreme Court, we appeal it and keep on.
They already
Meanwhile-
decided that.
And meanwhile, we do the kind of organizing we should have been doing among our listeners. We get those damn lists, get on the phone, get on the email, contact everybody in the city who might possibly ever have been a member of WBAI and organize. We haven't done any of that.
Well,
what we
that's,
should be doing
okay.
instead of
All
talking about
right.
it.
Well, then what about, well, I agree that's what we should do. We should organize, okay, and believe me, there's other options in the air floating around. I'm not even going to discuss right now. But there are positive options that they, with their ham-fisted measure, disrupted. I mean, it's just this extraordinary, the stupidity of what they did. But yeah, Bruce.
How much is the rent upstairs? A month?
$6,000 a month.
That's nothing.
Well, of course it's nothing, but then when you can't raise money, it's a big.
No, but what?
With $1 million in 3 months
As
is
a
a
thought,
big deal if you
as a
put those
thought,
expenses.
no. As a thought experiment, you're carrying this big heavy load on your back with Pacifica. What if you just drop it?
Become independent?
And you go internet, radio app, new call letters, and you do it that way. So they can have their streaming, and BAI comes back as a cell phone app, which is where everybody is anyway.
Not me.
Everybody, that's
Not her.
Most of the young people.
Well, okay.
If you're running around the city, you don't have a radio.
All right, let's talk about the ideas that have been discussed in California
Oh, Bruce.
that have to do with that you argued just now, Bruce. There's all these different.
No. You said, what do we do if they win the case?
Well, people are already talking about coming down here and using this space to do streaming. Okay, that's one thing that people are talking about. Another thing about what you discussed about turning the station into a streaming operation is that people have, there's a very interesting debate which I will dig up and send around that happened last year in a community access TV station in Marin County, California, where some of the architects of these ideas were debating what to do. And they brought in Kenny Friedman, who many people know was one of the people. He runs WFMU out there in New Jersey, and he has this whole thing called Audience Engine, which is a very interesting application of precisely what you're talking about using internet-based radio to raise money. And he actually finances his station by that. And that was discussed all the time as an option for WBAI. One of the things they talked about, which I'm pretty sure is going to come out of a little rabbit hole soon, is, well, suppose we take WBAI off the air. Suppose we just sell them. And they've actually talked about this. Let's use the money and we'll create an internet-based radio station at WBAI. In other words, the terrestrial signal, which we want to sell, which is worth 20, 30, 40 million bucks, which solves all our financial problems, which will give us like 5 or 6 years to maintain those heavily bloated staffs that they have in Berkeley and Los Angeles, so they can survive and thrive. Well, then, let's put some money in. This has actually been talked about. Let's give some money to the people in New York so they can secede and do their own thing. All right, and precisely back an option like yours. Now, I'm pretty sure that now we're in a situation where that option has to be explored now because of the situation.
Are you talking about doing that under the Pacifica Foundation umbrella?
They were talking about doing this under the Pacific.
No, are you talking about?
I'm not talking. I'm talking about that was what they had as an idea. The people who are the thinkers that were behind what just happened in New York by knocking us off the air. That was an argument they made about a year or two ago. They were arguing this kind of thing. And I'm not saying that we probably have to do the same thing now, locally, except we have to do it in rebellion. We have to basically set our operation up and stream it as an internet radio station now. And do exactly the kind of thing you're talking about now. But the question is how much is that going to cost, how do we logistically do that, etc. And remember, there's always been a big split here in New York because before this, the big division between us and others was that they wanted to go off to Manhattan Neighborhood Network. they wanted to essentially move the whole operation of Manhattan Neighborhood Network, stick the loan bills to the rest of the network, that is the $3 to $4 million, because the FCC does not allow in a public service operating agreement, that's the public radio aspect of what is called a lease management agreement, they don't allow the debt to be paid by the person who takes on the lease. In other words, Manhattan Neighborhood Network taking on a lease, but they would have left the money debt on the rest of Pacifica. So when we were having debates here in New York just a few weeks ago, some of the people in California saw those debates and said, my God, they're still bringing up Manhattan Neighborhood Network. Why are they doing this? Because they got upset. Because they said, why are these guys still arguing this? We have, we sold a building in Berkeley. We've bailed BAI out all these different times. Why are they going back and arguing that they want to basically go to Manhattan Neighborhood Network? That's certain people involved in this faction fight. And so that, of course, I think is one of many reasons why they made the decision to do what they did, to argue that they have to kick us off the air and not allow us to make money, because they're using the whole operation in the red scenario. The fact that I mentioned that before they decided to make this decision, the people in NETA had said the entire foundation is going to be broke in a year, minus 10% in the red. So we have to take action right now and eliminate this cost cutter, this cost parasite, BAI, and eliminate them. And that's their rationale to do what they did.
So what I'm saying is, you walk away and you go here. You can have everything, and you can stream elevator music if that's what you want to do. We're going to go over here, put BAI back on the air with the program grid that they had 2 weeks ago on the internet. And it's totally separate. You keep this, do whatever you want to do. Pacifica owes the money, not us, right? Remember?
Right.
It's your debt. You negotiated it. It's your debt, so have a nice day.
Do you have,
See, what they're gonna
an
do-
idea how much it costs to run a streaming station? Every listener has to have a separate stream, and it costs more. Every listener that you get.
No, it's by the bandwidth. It's really not that expensive. I mean, there's a ton of people doing
Well,
it.
what they want to do is, see, the problem with that argument is that's an interesting way to solve the problem, except you've then surrendered loss of control of the terrestrial radio signal to them, which is what is probably, from the point of view of some of us, the ultimate objective.
That's its biggest
To get the radio signal under their control completely in order to swap it or sell it the way they want, because I've been in boards like this for years.
This
Yeah.
was based on, what do we do if we lose the court case? And
Well,
if you lose the court case, you lose the frequency.
we're not yet there. It could
I
happen
didn't mean it
tomorrow.
that way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's not, yeah, go on, Matthew.
Yes, I don't know how feasible this is. When you have somebody that operates the way these people are, it's on completely false premises. They're using, it's a scam, basically, what they're saying. If you had somebody that was attacking you with a knife, are you going to say, now wait a minute, it's illegal to attack people? Or are you going to use your martial arts and break his arm or something? The idea is, a person that operates like that, this is Bernil, whatever it is, has a history, probably, of criminal background, criminal activity. And I suggest, if it's possible to investigate it, find out what this is, and expose it. How does that sound?
Well, having actually taught people how to defend themselves if somebody attacks you with a knife, I can tell you that when you actually teach somebody how to defend somebody attacking you with a knife, you also have to say to that person that you're going to get cut. You're probably going to get cut, even though I can teach you how to break the guy's arm, to cripple him, to do this, to throw him down the ground, smash him, etc. You're going to get cut. So when you're in a knife fight, you got to assume you're going to get a little bit of backlash on that. We don't know how this is going to work out. All I know is that they basically have pissed everybody off here in New York. They've essentially taken a 2x4 and gone onto a pack of beehives and gone kaboom and knocked them all over. And they've got buzzes and hornets and bees flying all over, out to sting the hell out of them. And they have made a big mistake, because you literally have dozens of people involved in this station who have all sorts of what they do. They may not, some of them may not be the best broadcasters, but I sure as hell know they have lots of political experience. Okay, I include myself in that. You got dozens of people like this, and you now have basically put them in a mode to sick them on you. So it's going to be one hell of a situation, and you got people who are not going to give up. They're going to just keep fighting. And again, it's a nihilistic waste of that energy. Suppose all this energy right now is being thrust back on, okay, ceasefire, you guys get back on the air and prove to us that you can do what you can do. That'd be a hell of a lot better way to use that energy than to do it right now, which is just destructive. It's totally destructive what they're doing. And, you know, my feeling is like, you know, I know a lot of us want revenge after this bullshit. Trust me. You know, I'm part of, I've got all sorts of different consanguinity that makes me into that kind of head. But I would like to just simply be able to get back on the air and show that we can do a better job. But we can't return back to normal. I know that.
So where is it
Tom.
going now? We have 30,000 people in Pacific, 6,000 WBAI. That's the amount of votes, the ballots that went out. Now, if you organize something to save the station and 35 people show up, how organized is that? I mean, what do you? I mean, what's the? And people don't have a script of what they're going to say when they call up, and they don't want to get too aggressive because they might be accused of being, intimidating. So, I mean, how much are we going to get done in the next few days? I guess it all relies on how good the lawyers are.
Well, unfortunately, we're sort of stuck with the whole thing is in federal court. It's uncertain. It could be a defeat. I don't know what the consequences of that are. Arthur needs reinforcements. I contacted, as I say, I contacted 10 law firms on Friday. And I don't even know what these other people are doing. Like, you know, we got to wait till Wednesday. Well, I'm not waiting for them. I'm not waiting for those guys. I contacted friends of mine who work at these law firms and said, how do I get pro bono help? How do we get a major law firm in New York City to help us? Interesting problem. And I'm going to still pursue that. Because even if we lose on Monday, I'm going to continue to ask for legal help. I even called up friends of mine at Yale Law School, Columbia Law School, and NYU Law School to ask them for help. But I want mean, dirty-ass litigators to be on our side fighting. I don't want academics. I want street-fighting lawyers to be on our side to fight them. That's what we're out to get as reinforcements. So, you know, yes, everybody should come on Wednesday. They should assert their opinions. We're going to have another meeting next Sunday at the atrium, most likely. You should buy coffee from Melissa, because Melissa basically does. All right, good. I'm glad. Buy her goods, and we'll see what happens. But it's a volatile, crazy mess. I don't have to tell you, underestimate that. And that's what's going on. Everybody should show up at the court tomorrow. Yeah.
You know what, PND is supposed to have a meeting tonight, right?
They're supposed to have a meeting tonight. They noticed the meeting. It is probably going to be declared illegal by the other side.
Because it was a couple hours late?
Yeah, something like that. If I was them, remember, you know, it's like the Duke of Wellington said back at the end of the Peninsular Wars and after he defeated Napoleon, or actually I forget, he said, you know what, you got to get into this thinking of what's the other side of the hill. What is the enemy's mentality? In terms of, his comment was, the other side of the hill. I always want to know what the other side of the hill is. Well, I want to know what the other side of the hill is. I want to know what they think, because they are acting aggressively and they are right now ahead of us in terms of decision making, and they have control of resources.
It was well planned.
Well, this was a well planned. What happened on that day in October, just on the 7th, was not something out of the blue. It's been blowing up for many years. That's why I gave you guys the financial information, because no one wants to say, and Mitchell and I disagree with this, their narrative is you guys suck financially. What are you going to do about it? Why should we allow you to pull us down? I'm telling you what their argument is, and guess what? This was an exhibit that went in front of the judge, Engelmeyer, to look at.
Well,
Okay,
our
and
job
all-
has to be what
Well,
they have.
well,
saddled
what
us with.
what we have to think of is how we're gonna change it for the better. How we're gonna eliminate this problem. And, you know, and their attitude is, we've given you all these chances to eliminate this problem. We did this for you, we did that for you.
Keep on
And then
saddling
what?
us.
And then what? You know? And, you know, they just said, well, how can you guys think that we should tolerate this? Now, again, that Pacifica restructuring project thing you should look at. Because that basically argues about what their plans are. They basically want to create an appointed directorship. So one of the targets is going to have to be all these guys they've lined up to be the new directors.
This is
Heidi
gonna be
Bogosian,
the
all these
NBC.
people around the country, they've lined up to be as the directors to take over the board in January. Right now, we're thwarting that objective with what we're doing right here.
Heidi Bogosian said,
Yeah, Heidi Bogosian said she would be a director, and there's about 9 of them or 10 of them that have decided to join to be. You just go up to the website and look at it.
Those are the people I think we need to contact, actually.
Well, we need to contact them, but we need to also contact these board members. I think, you know, other options have to be thought of, including demonstrations, etc., which we can get into. I'm not going to talk about them on a film here. And there's all these things we need to do. But there's all these positive things that are underway that, you know, hopefully will be revealed as time goes
What are
on.
the results of the local station board elections? It's over, the votes are counted, what are the results?
We don't know what the
November
results are.
1st is the deadline for announcing.
Do we have any representation
November
over during
1st
the
is the
council?
deadline for
It's,
announcing.
you could, anybody's welcome to go see it. It's going to be, there was a.
When is it gonna be? I actually
Next week, I think
photographed
Tuesday.
while I voted so that I would
I think it's Tuesday, Ron, but I'm not sure.
make sure
You
that
can
there
go
was
see
no
if you-
tampering.
Well, the composition of the board will change. But that's why the people in Berkeley are knocking Tom Voorhees out, and I understand that what they did was they took 2 members of the Community Advisory Board and KPFA and put them on the LSB to further stack it in their favor. They did that yesterday at their meeting. I was on the phone with somebody in Berkeley. So, you know, this is, I mean, again, you know, they're relentlessly deciding to implement what they want to do here. And unfortunately, we have to face them with the same kind of relentlessness. Equally relentless and ruthless as far as I'm concerned. Because there's no time for kumbaya now. If others want kumbaya,
That
fine.
song has gotten a bad rap. It's a really good song.
Well, yeah, but then they decided to bury the hatchet with the kumbaya factions out there. It's like, anyway, go on, yeah, Carol.
Yeah, I do want to make a point about the restructuring of the board. Those new bylaws that are being slipped in under the doorway, under the door, are very dangerous. What they're doing is reducing the number of elected representatives to the point where 3 people will end up controlling the foundation, because with the reduced boards, they can then select people that they want. If you look carefully at the proposal, it is an attempt to destroy what we did in 1999 and 2003. I was on that first board, and it was elected, and it was very exciting to have elected representation. The goal now is to get rid of elected representatives and have a director, to have a group of people attached to the executive director who will, in fact, direct the foundation. It is more efficient. Democracy is very inefficient, and as you know, it gets ugly and mean and dirty, but it is elected. And my feeling is that if we had any sense, we would be educating people running for office instead of taking people who are party hacks or sort of electing them in. So we really need to look very carefully at those. I think we are unwieldy. We're a large group. If we had better trained people running for boards, we wouldn't have all these problems. We have a lot of people who are in there for their own purposes. They're flying their own flags, and they're not worried about BAI. They're certainly not worried about the larger picture, Pacifica. They're worried about their own job. So we really need to rethink. These are pernicious. The bylaws, new proposed bylaws changes. I think they're dangerous. They're sliding by us with all this problem. It's as if WBAI is just a distraction, and it may well be. But I don't overlook that, and don't think that it's nothing. Why those change will reduce the elected representation. It may make it more efficient.
Well, we'll make it more efficient for them, because if you look at the bylaws changes, they will essentially go back to a similar situation that existed, that was changed in 2000, 2002. Now again, the question of the selection of the board members and all that, again, I'm just stating things that I personally feel, and they're my opinions only. I do not think that the PNB in general, for the past 18 years, has been reflective or creative in dealing with the problems that we face. I do not assume that because somebody was in Mississippi in the summer of 1964, or was in People's Park in Berkeley in 1969, or was a major leader in some revolutionary nationalist group, or was a famous anti-war activist. I don't assume that that person automatically has the skill set to deal and work in a modern 21st century broadcasting institution like Pacifica with the greatest effectiveness. The result of that is that some of them will argue we have to defer to our professional staff. Well, if you look at the professional staff, again, I don't put them down. They have a terrible situation and difficult situation to deal with station by station. There's been a tremendous turnover of the professional staff for the past 20 years. A constant succession of executive directors, general managers, program directors, etc., development directors, business directors, etc., etc. And rather than have the listener members, frankly, because as much as sloppy as it can be, I've always been a backer of having the involvement of the listener members, and you sit there and have these raucous battles about what to do and what not to do, but I've always been in favor of that kind of input. But I also think we have to be realistic about what the financial situation is. It doesn't make sense to mislead people about the financial situation. We can interpret why we think it's that way. Everybody here who is sitting here has had a concrete role in trying to rectify those problems, starting from Mitchell and Matthew. Everybody here has concretely gone in and done things to try to change that. I personally think that we have to create in each station, for example, we argued 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I argued and put forth resolutions out of the Community Advisory Board to have Facebook. Everybody should be on Twitter. Now, it's not a no-brainer. The reason to argue those things is that one could see incrementally that if we were creatively interacting with digital media, each show, and using it creatively, I'm personally pretty sure that we could have easily had more than 1% audience boost of each show annually. I personally think it probably would have been 5% or 20%. No shows were doing that. It wasn't mandated as policy that any show has to integrate social media into its broadcasting. It was sort of a half-assed, catch-as-catch-can kind of policy. The same thing goes for podcasting. We have not entered that sphere, where certain stations have, that have more resources. Berkeley has more resources than us. But basically, the innovations in podcasting have come out of NYC in New York. They got the bulk of the money in CPB to really do interesting stuff, and they do interesting stuff. $10 million, $20 million was invested in NYC to come out with a podcast, and you can see that the NPR stations are a leader in podcasting right now. Pacifica is nowhere to be seen in any significant way. So all these kind of things are the kind of things we have to change in order to move forward. And you're going to have a lot of discussion about retaining the original programming grid. Okay, fine, great. The programming grid was in the middle of being changed. It actually had been changed to the point where it was increasing in audience. It was starting to increase in audience in terms of the changes that Linda had done with Bertolt. They were getting actually 2 to 3 times more increase in certain categories of time. And so it was slowly changing, and also there was a conscious effort to try to bring younger people in. Okay, that's all been screwed up because of all this stuff. It's not to say it's perfect, it's not to say it's moved with great rapidity. Certainly, I was sitting there fighting to get things done. You know, again, it's only my opinion. Does that mean I'm right? No. You know, I'm only one voice to give advice and policy suggestions. Does that mean I'm right? No, it doesn't. I'm not responsible for the financial situation. But, you know, one could argue that, you know, we're going to be a little more adamant about this if we win, because what was the procedures that existed up to now did not work. They did not work. They led to this situation. That's where they're right about it, okay? That's my opinion. What they're not right about is to come in and basically destroy the place. Their objective is, okay, we can't change this place. Let's go in and blow the goddamn place up. That's their approach. That's always been the approach of Pacifica, by the way, to change programming. They blew up Berkeley in 1999. They came in and just blew the place up. And they got one hell of a response in Berkeley in 1999 when they did that. So our objective is to make sure they get the same kind of response here. That kind of level of resistance. And basically to overthrow them. That's what I'm in here for. Yeah, Bruce.
I mean, my take on it is really much simpler. I think they're looking at how can we keep KPFA afloat for another 3-4 years. So the simplest solution is just to sell the New York City frequency, and that'll give us enough money to run out another 3-4 years, and after that I'm not working here anymore. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think that's probably about as far as they took it, because they didn't come to you with a plan of how to turn the station around. They didn't present anything to the board on how this was going to work. It was, you know, like Sears used to own a lot of property, like the Sears stores were on property that Sears owned, so they did a sale lease back. They sold the property and then leased the store back. Well, that was a quick fix, like heroin, you know? So I think that's as complicated as it gets.
All right, yeah, I agree with that. But you know, I mean, amazes me as you look at right now when the battle of Netflix is going on. Netflix is being contested by Walt Disney and everything else. What are they doing in terms of trying to retain market share? They're investing in the quality of the product they put out. They're making sure that they keep the quality of the product coming out at high standards. So instead of retreating, again, people don't want to question the quality of the product. The quality of the product, as far as I'm concerned, is responsible in part for what just happened. The quality of the product has not been effective for 20 years. It's not been able to attract enough listeners. Listeners have voted with their money to go elsewhere, and that's a simple objective fact.
Well, except I will say that as a long-term BAI listener, and maybe not so much 2 years ago, I've seen a tremendous change in the programming. I mean, it's really gotten a lot better. And a lot of new shows, and I think if you run around the city and you ask the activist progressive community who's covering you, who's putting you on the air, who's talking about your issues, go talk to Carnegie about deed theft, okay? Go talk to, BAI was the first station to put AOC on the air when nobody else would cover her. Nobody covered her until she won the primary. All of a sudden then they're all over her. Right. But I worked on her campaign. I can tell you, nobody covered her, period. Nobody. And one of the interesting things is how, you know, the progressive media in New York City has rallied around the WBAI's defense, right? Crickets.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah, you know, like, huh, what, nah.
That's where my cynicism is countered by my colleagues, because they will point out to me these things, which I agree with. But I just want to, you know, my whole thing is we got to do it better. We got to be better at it. We got.
No, you're absolutely right about the money.
Well, not only that.
The money and the fundraising, you're absolutely right. But the programming has gotten better.
When Rosalie asks about the question of bringing people into a lot of money, I know people have a lot of money. I mean, I know people who are wealthy. I've asked them to, well, what do you think about what goes on at BAI? I'm not going to waste my money. All right? So, you know, people have to be honest about this. You know, people have to sort of, okay, why don't you want to support, I mean, people have to get over their delusions about of grandeur. We have to figure out ways, I'm not saying homogenize it, you know, people bitch and say, oh, you're going to NPRize it. Well, you know, guess what? I personally like produced radio. I like produced radio. That costs money. Or if you're doing it without money, we have to figure out ways to do it creatively. That's why I've argued for years that we should basically be in complete collegial collaboration with all the major universities in New York City and the tri-state area.
Right.
And we should have them
College
be
radio.
coming and, well, not only college radio, but the journalism programs.
Yeah.
There are people, I went to a whole celebration of the New School a couple of weeks ago, talked to someone in charge of their binaural program, and lined up the ability to get them to help us, because they have resources. If you incrementally, again, it's a question of, you got to change the website, you got to sort of more creatively use the website, use streaming, use, the whole idea of Pacific Across America is not a bad idea. Objectively speaking, having a programming stream of the best of Pacific, it just is what they're doing right now, of course, is they're using it as a way to basically turn us into a repeater station. But the idea itself is not a bad idea. We should be having those kind of things. Every station should have streaming options that allow us to experiment with content and do things we can't do. For example, everybody's complaining about the lack of classical music stations in New York. Well, why don't we just simply figure out a way legally to stream and create a new WNCN or a new WQXR that would bring in, okay, white upper middle class money, who gives a damn? Or in the case of WGBO, do experimentation with jazz programming. Again, bring in upper middle class African American money. Those are things we can do that we don't do because we don't have the imagination to do. And that's where, again, my problem with the board is they have exercised and manifested to me a collective lack of imagination and creativity for the past 20 years. And all they're doing is thinking about aggregate approaches. They look at bottom line approaches. Sure, if I had given you guys the money that was looked at by the entire report that was given to the board and to make a decision about cutting us out, hey, it's a rational decision, although there are other motives involved in there. Again, they aren't thinking about, well, how do you make it better so you get more money coming in? That to me is always the bottom line. How can you make the bottom line better? How can you act? In the legal documents they submit, they say we only can get 1 to 5% growth. That's unacceptable to me. To think that in 1 year, with all the kind of creative energy we can call on in New York City, to think that we could not get beyond a 1 to 5% growth in revenue is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Especially now, with this bastard in the White House. I mean, really, absurd. Absolutely absurd. And again, I resent the fact that instead of trying to figure out creative ways of handling the situation in the Middle East, for example, which I was asked to do a few weeks ago, I have to now be spending my energy doing this. I really resent it. And that's why I want to defeat them, and defeat them badly. All right? I want to defeat them. I want to win. I want to win a victory. I want to defeat them. So unfortunately, I got everybody in New York pissed off, and they're going to find out what we're like, what New Yorkers are like. And that's not a pleasant thing. And I hate to, and what a waste of energy. What a waste of energy to have to do this.
I walked along today along the East River, and I see what was just put up there, the park along the East River, being eroded by the water. The water is so high now it undercuts. We should be reporting that. People should know what is happening. I don't think people even know. Everybody's in their own silo. They have no idea of the things that are happening because of climate change. I mean, it's incredible. Take a walk and look for yourselves and see. I mean, we spent millions of dollars fixing up this beautiful walkway along the East River. It was,
Say the
people,
water level's up to
the water's coming up
Eroding.
underneath.
Wow. Well, that's a good example of something we blew. Why couldn't the whole network have spent the entire week when the ICG was over here in the UN? Why weren't they collaborating to really do a hell of a job, to really knock it out of the ballpark in terms of covering what the hell was going on with the UN? I know that Berkeley sent one of their better reporters, Brian Edward Tinker, who even though he's not necessarily a pal of BAI, the guy's a good reporter, they sent him in there to do reporting. Well, why won't we collaborate as a network to really come and do creative programming around the climate change issue? I mean, hell, I had little kids come up to me in the subway and say, "Sir, what are you doing for climate change?" Mister, you know, and one idea that I heard from the people at the grassroots radio conference I wanted to share and have it on the TV here was that they have a show in New Mexico where the listeners once a month come in and do a TV show, do a radio show. They actually contribute to doing a radio show, which I thought was a cool idea. You know, have people in the community say, "Okay, this is what I want to do, I want to talk about." And they put them together as a radio show.
Did you see the lady that runs around with a little trailer? And she has a radio station in her trailer. She has a
coffee table conversation. She just drives around and gets some normal person to come into her trailer and have a coffee table conversation. It's really cool. But yeah, exactly like that.
Well,
Yeah.
and then remember, we have almost 130 pirate stations in New York City. 35 in Brooklyn alone. Now, what the hell, I mean, you know, God bless them. I mean, they interfere with our signal, some of these stations. But why don't we simply go out to these guys and say, "Look, you guys do your thing, you know, do your pirate radio stuff, that's cool. But why don't we bring you guys in, you guys come on a legitimate station once in a while, talk about what you want to talk about."
right.
You know, 135 pirate radio stations in the greater
Called the
metropolitan
Pirate Hour.
Yeah, pirate, whatever the hell it is. Like, you know, and then the issue of community engagement, which was raised by the former the executive director, Maxie Jackson. Well, you know, I have my own opinions about community boards and all that. I always felt like we should have green-lighted teams to go on the community advisory boards. 4 or 5 of us go in there and say, "Look, guys, we want to sit here and we want to hear what issues are affecting you as citizens in your community board." All right? And you go in there, because I organized a political campaign for 3 years where I was dealing with missing children issues. So I use the community board process effectively politically to do things locally at the state level and the federal level, to change laws about how they handle missing children. And to me, that is hard work. That's work that we need to do, that's not simply being here bullshitting about, you know, how terrible it is. But that kind of work incrementally, going in and talking to people in their local neighborhoods and saying, "Hey, what are the issues that affect you? You come and share it with us on the air." That kind of work needs to be systematically done to rebuild the whole situation. Yeah,
Are you familiar with Bob Law's show?
yeah, I am.
All right, so Bob had
Councilmember Cornegie on his show to talk about deed theft and TBT transfer. And he had a bunch of other people on to talk about it. And then Cornegie had a hearing in City Council. And then Bob Law had a community forum emergency meeting that he organized in a church in Brooklyn. So that's like, it's happening on your station. I mean, exactly what you're talking about. You got On the Count, you've got Housing Notebook. Housing Notebook was probably one of the reasons we got those new laws in Albany about rent control, because they just kept pounding and pounding and pounding, and they had council people on and they had experts on, and so maybe you don't give yourself enough credit. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening.
Right, there's a lot of stuff happening, but we can do it better, okay? That's my opinion. Now, just to let you know, tomorrow at 3:15, the court appearance will happen, where is it gonna happen again? Down there in 40 Center Street, or 30, whatever the hell it is. The federal court building, which I believe is near Chatham Square. In room 3, Judge Engelmeyer will be where it is, so people can ask to come. There will be the mass meeting on Wednesday at the People's Forum at 6:30 at 320 West 37th Street. And then we will have another town hall meeting, probably at the atrium, next Sunday at 1:30. Okay? To keep people apprised as to what's happening. All right?
You put it out there for.
And, you know, yes, in turn, we'll see how all this evolves during the week.
Did you say 60 Center Street, room 350?
I think it's
Now,
40.
40 Center Street, Foley Square, or whatever the hell it is. Somebody have the right address.
It would be good to know exactly where
I think that's probably where Lynn Stewart's trial was.
Yeah.
It's
that
the U.S. Federal Court building.
Okay.
And I believe that's around the center, around the street from where the U.S. State Supreme Court building is. All right, well, thank you for coming, and we'll have another one next Sunday.
Right, thanks for